Alexander III of Macedon, known to history as Alexander the Great, was born in Pella in 356 BC and became king at just 20 years old after the assassination of his father, Philip II. From the beginning, Alexander proved he was not merely an heir, but a force destined to reshape the ancient world. Educated by the philosopher Aristotle, Alexander combined sharp intellect with exceptional battlefield instincts. In 334 BC, he launched his legendary campaign against the mighty Achaemenid Persian Empire, leading a relatively small but highly disciplined army across Asia Minor. What followed was a decade of near-constant warfare that would redefine military history. Alexander crushed Persian forces in a series of decisive engagements, most notably at the Battle of Issus and later at Gaugamela, where his use of speed, formation control, and direct leadership shattered armies many times larger than his own. He personally led cavalry charges, fought alongside his men, and repeatedly placed himself at the center of the most dangerous moments, earning fierce loyalty from his troops. With the defeat and eventual death of Persian King Darius III, Alexander dismantled the largest empire of the age. Yet he did not stop there. His conquests pushed eastward through Central Asia and into India, where he defeated King Porus at the Battle of the Hydaspes in 326 BC, one of his toughest and most tactically complex victories. By the age of 30, Alexander ruled an empire stretching from Greece to the Indus River, undefeated in battle. His greatness lay not only in conquest, but in his ability to adapt, inspire, and dominate across radically different terrains and cultures. Even today, military academies study his campaigns, and his name remains the standard by which great commanders are measured. Genghis Khan. Born Temujin around 1162, was the founder and first great Khan of the Mongol Empire, which would become the largest contiguous empire in history after his death. Rising from a harsh and unstable childhood, he came to power by uniting the fiercely independent nomadic tribes of Northeast Asia, something no leader before him had been able to achieve. Once proclaimed Genghis Khan, he unleashed a series of military campaigns that transformed Eurasia. His armies moved with unprecedented speed, discipline, and coordination, striking enemies across vast distances. During his lifetime, Mongol forces campaigned against the Kara Kitai, the Caucasus, the Khwarezmian Empire, and the Western Xia and Jin dynasties of China. These wars were marked by overwhelming force and psychological warfare, often resulting in devastating destruction of resisting cities, particularly in Khwarezmian and Western Xia territories. By the end of his life, the Mongol Empire controlled much of Central Asia and northern China. Genghis Khan personally oversaw the defeat of the Western Xia shortly before his death in 1227. In preparation for the future, he named his son Ogadai as his successor, ensuring continuity of leadership. After his death, his grandsons divided the empire into powerful khanates that would extend Mongol rule across China, Korea, Central Asia, the Caucasus, and deep into Eastern Europe. Despite the fearsome reputation earned through his campaigns, Genghis Khan's greatness extended beyond warfare. He ruled through merit rather than noble birth, promoted religious tolerance, and adopted the Uyghur script to create a written Mongol language. Most significantly, he brought the Silk Road under a single political system, enabling safer trade and communication between East Asia, the Islamic world, and Europe. To modern Mongolians, Genghis Khan is remembered as the founding father of their nation, a leader whose influence reshaped the world forever. György Kastrioti, better known as Skanderbeg, was an Albanian nobleman and military commander who led one of the most remarkable rebellions against the Ottoman Empire in the 15th century. Born in 1405 into the noble Kastrioti family, he was sent at a young age to the Ottoman court as a hostage, where he was educated and trained for war. For nearly 20 years, he served the Ottoman Sultan with distinction, rising through the ranks and eventually becoming governor of the Sanjak of Dibra. In 1443, during the Battle of Nish, Skanderbeg deserted the Ottoman army and returned to his homeland. He swiftly seized control of Kruja and nearby strongholds, openly renouncing Ottoman authority. The following year, he was appointed commander of the League of Legia, a coalition that united Albanian nobles for the first time under a single leader. Though his rebellion did not include all Albanian territories, it became a national resistance that brought together people of different regions, dialects, and backgrounds in a common cause. For 25 years, from 1443 to 1468, Skanderbeg led a force of roughly 10,000 men against vastly larger and better equipped Ottoman armies. Through superior tactics, knowledge of terrain, and relentless mobility, he repeatedly defeated Ottoman campaigns aimed at crushing his resistance. Nearly all of his victories were achieved within a small area of northern Albania, making his success even more extraordinary. His leadership significantly delayed Ottoman expansion into Western Europe and earned him admiration across the Christian world as a symbol of resistance. Beyond the battlefield, Skanderbeg ruled as Dominus Albaniae, or Lord of Albania, claiming no higher title. He secured alliances with Naples and Venice, and later served as commander of crusading forces under Pope Pius II. Skanderbeg died in 1468, undefeated in battle, remembered as one of the most persistent and successful opponents the Ottoman Empire ever faced. Spartacus was a Thracian gladiator and military leader who became the central figure of the Third Servile War, 73 to 71 BC, the largest and most threatening slave uprising in the history of the Roman Republic. Originally from Thrace in the Balkans, Spartacus may have once served as a soldier in the Roman auxiliary forces, learning discipline and combat skills before being captured and sold into slavery. In 73 BC, he and about 70 fellow gladiators escaped from a gladiatorial school at Capua, arming themselves with captured weapons and taking refuge on Mount Vesuvius. What followed was extraordinary. Spartacus's small band defeated a Roman militia force sent to trap them on the mountain by ingeniously rappelling down the cliffs using vines and outflanking their enemies, routing them completely. This first victory inspired thousands of enslaved people to join Spartacus's cause, swelling his ranks to an army that may have numbered 90,000 to 120,000 fighters at its height, comprised not only of escaped gladiators, but of freed slaves and others disaffected under Roman rule. Spartacus proved to be a brilliant and charismatic commander, repeatedly defeating Roman forces, including trained legions and multiple consular armies. His army's greatest triumph came at the Battle of Picenum, where his forces routed 2 consular Roman armies and came within striking distance of Rome itself. Throughout the campaign, he demonstrated tactical flexibility, uniting a motley army through shared hardship and remarkable battlefield leadership. Though ultimately cornered and killed in the final battle near the Salarius River in 71 BC, Spartacus's revolt shook the Roman Republic to its core. His legacy endures as a symbol of resistance and one of the most daring warriors to stand against Rome's military might. Leonidas I was a warrior king of Sparta and the 17th ruler of the Agiad dynasty, a royal line that claimed descent from the mythical hero Heracles. Born into one of the most militarized societies in the ancient world, Leonidas was raised under the harsh Spartan agoge system, which forged endurance, discipline, and absolute loyalty to the state. This upbringing shaped him into a commander who embodied the Spartan ideal of courage and sacrifice. Leonidas entered history during the Second Persian War, when the Persian king Xerxes I launched a massive invasion of Greece in 480 BC. Tasked with delaying this overwhelming force, Leonidas led a small allied army to the narrow mountain pass of Thermopylae, a strategic choke point that neutralized Persia's numerical advantage. At the heart of this defense were Leonidas and his elite guard of 300 Spartan warriors, supported by several thousand Greek allies. For days, the Greek forces repelled repeated Persian assaults, inflicting heavy losses through superior discipline, formation fighting, and mastery of close combat warfare. When the Persians discovered a hidden path around the pass, Leonidas dismissed most of the allied troops and chose to remain behind with his Spartans and a handful of allies. Knowing death was certain, he made his final stand to buy time for Greece to prepare its defenses. Leonidas was killed in battle, fighting at the front lines alongside his men. Though Thermopylae was a tactical defeat, it became a strategic and symbolic victory. Leonidas's sacrifice inspired Greek unity and resistance. helping pave the way for eventual victories over Persia. His stand at Thermopylae immortalized him as a symbol of defiance, honor, and warrior leadership, making him one of history's most enduring military icons. Miyamoto Musashi was a legendary Japanese swordsman, strategist, philosopher, and ronin. Born around 1584 during Japan's violent Sengoku period, an era defined by constant warfare and shifting loyalties. Known by several names throughout his life, Musashi earned lasting fame through his unmatched skill in combat and his undefeated record in 61 documented duels, a feat never surpassed in Japanese history. From a young age, Musashi immersed himself in real combat rather than formal courtly training. He fought in battles linked to the unification of Japan and refined his skills through life and death encounters rather than tournament matches. His duels were often brutal, fought with live blades against highly respected masters, many of whom were older, stronger, and more experienced. Yet Musashi consistently prevailed through timing, psychological pressure, and adaptability rather than brute strength alone. He became famous for developing Niten Ichiryu, a revolutionary style that used both the long sword and short sword simultaneously. This approach broke traditional conventions and gave him greater control, flexibility, and offensive power in battle. His mastery earned him the title Kensei, meaning sword saint, a rare honor reserved for warriors whose skill transcended technique. In his later years, Musashi turned his battlefield experience into philosophy. He wrote The Book of Five Rings, a timeless work on strategy, combat, and mindset, still studied by martial artists, soldiers, and business leaders today. His second work, Dokodo, reflected his disciplined, solitary approach to life. Miyamoto Musashi died undefeated in 1645, leaving behind a legacy not just of victory, but of mastery, strategy, and warrior philosophy that endures centuries later. Hannibal Barca was a Carthaginian general and statesman who became Rome's most dangerous enemy during the Second Punic War, 218 to 201 BC. Born in 247 BC, he was the son of Hamilcar Barca, a veteran commander of the First Punic War. According to tradition, Hannibal swore an oath in his youth to never be a friend of Rome, a vow that would shape his entire life. Hannibal's greatest achievement came with his bold invasion of Italy. In one of the most daring maneuvers in military history, he led a multinational army, including war elephants, across the Alps, shocking the Roman Republic. Despite severe losses from terrain and weather, he entered Italy and inflicted a series of devastating defeats on Roman forces. At Trebia, Lake Trasimene, and most famously Cannae, Hannibal annihilated much larger Roman armies through superior tactics, deception, and battlefield control. His double envelopment at Cannae remains one of the most studied maneuvers in military history. For over 15 years, Hannibal operated deep in enemy territory, repeatedly outmaneuvering Roman generals and keeping Rome itself under constant threat. Though ultimately recalled to Africa and defeated at Zama, his campaign permanently changed Roman warfare. Hannibal's brilliance lay in his adaptability, leadership, and ability to defeat superior numbers through strategy alone. Even Rome came to regard him as one of the greatest commanders ever to face its legions. Saladin. Born an-Nasir Salah ad-Din Yusuf ibn Ayyub in 1137, was the first Sultan of Egypt and Syria and the founder of the Ayyubid dynasty. A Sunni Muslim of Kurdish origin, he rose to power during the Crusades and became the most formidable opponent the Crusader states ever faced. Saladin's rise began in Egypt, where he served under his uncle Shirkuh, and later became vizier of the Fatimid Caliphate. Through political skill and military success against Crusader attacks, he consolidated power and abolished the Fatimid regime in 1171, restoring Sunni rule under the Abbasid Caliphate. After the death of Nur ad-Din in 1174, Saladin moved swiftly into Syria, taking Damascus peacefully and later securing Hama and Homs. His victory over rival Muslim forces at the Battle of the Horns of Hama confirmed his authority, and he was proclaimed Sultan of Egypt and Syria. Saladin's greatness was proven in war against the Crusaders. In 1187, he achieved a decisive victory at the Battle of Hattin, destroying the main Crusader army and capturing key leaders. This triumph opened the way for the recapture of Jerusalem, which Saladin took later that year, ending nearly 90 years of Crusader rule. Renowned not only for military brilliance but also for mercy and honor, Saladin died in Damascus in 1193, remembered as one of history's greatest warrior statesmen. Vlad III Dracula, better known as Vlad the Impaler, was a voivode of Wallachia who ruled during one of the most violent periods in Eastern European history. Born in the early 1430s, he was the son of Vlad Dracul and spent part of his youth as a hostage in the Ottoman Empire, an experience that deeply shaped his methods and worldview. After his father and elder brother were murdered, Vlad's life became defined by revenge, survival, and power. Vlad ruled Wallachia 3 times, constantly fighting to defend his throne against internal rivals, Hungarian interference, and Ottoman expansion. His most famous campaigns came during his conflict with the Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II. In 1462, Vlad launched a brutal scorched earth campaign south of the Danube, devastating Ottoman territory and massacring enemy forces to cripple their advance. His most daring act was the night attack at Targovishte, where he attempted to assassinate Mehmed II by striking directly at the heart of the Ottoman camp. Though outnumbered, Vlad relied on psychological warfare, terror tactics, and relentless raids to compensate for Wallachia's limited resources. His use of impalement, while infamous, was intended to intimidate enemies and deter invasion. Despite eventual betrayal and imprisonment, Vlad returned to power briefly before being killed in battle in 1477. To Romanians, Vlad remains a national hero who resisted Ottoman domination with unmatched ferocity, while his fearsome reputation later inspired the legend of Dracula. Xiang Yu lived for only 30 years, from 232 to 202 BCE, yet in that short time, he became one of the most formidable warlords in Chinese history. He rose during the collapse of the Qin dynasty and emerged as the supreme commander of the rebel Chu forces. Through relentless campaigning, Xiang Yu shattered Qin armies, captured the capital, and personally oversaw the execution of the last Qin emperor. For a brief moment, he stood as the most powerful man in China, before internal rivalries and prolonged war with the rising Han forces, led by Liu Bang, ultimately brought about his downfall. Xiang Yu's success was driven by both brute force and battlefield command. Fighting in an era when iron weapons were becoming widespread, he and his soldiers were well armored and heavily armed. Legends describe Xiang Yu as possessing extraordinary physical strength, capable of lifting massive objects with ease, and it is believed he wielded larger and heavier weapons than most warriors of his time. Born into a prominent family in a rebellious region absorbed by Qin rule, Xiang Yu was exposed to warfare early. He trained under his uncle, a seasoned general, and quickly developed into both a fearsome fighter and an aggressive tactician. On the battlefield, Xiang Yu fought at the front lines, overwhelming enemies through sheer power, resilience, and intimidation. Though ultimately defeated, Xiang Yu's combination of strength, courage, and command cemented his legacy as one of ancient China's greatest warrior leaders. Joan of Arc, known in France as Jeanne d'Arc, was a peasant girl who rose to become one of the most extraordinary military figures of the Middle Ages. Born around 1412 during the Hundred Years' War, she emerged at a time when France was close to collapse under English occupation. Claiming divine guidance, Joan convinced French commanders to let her accompany the army despite having no formal military training. What set her apart was not tactical schooling, but her unshakable confidence, moral authority, and ability to inspire soldiers. She wore armor, carried a banner into battle, and fought at the front lines, becoming a powerful symbol of resistance. Joan played a decisive role in lifting the siege of Orléans in 1429, a turning point in the war. Her presence revitalized the French army, which went on to win several key victories along the Loire River. These successes cleared the path for Charles VII to be crowned king at Reims, fulfilling Joan's primary mission. Though eventually captured by Burgundian forces allied with England and executed in 1431, Joan's impact was lasting. Her victories shifted momentum in France's favor, and her courage under fire made her a legend. Shaka Zulu. Born Shaka ka Senzanga Kona around 1787, was one of the most influential and feared rulers in southern African history. Born near present-day KwaZulu-Natal, Shaka endured a difficult childhood due to his illegitimacy and spent his early years in his mother's settlements. There, he was initiated into an Ibutho Lempi, a traditional fighting unit where his talent for warfare quickly became apparent. Shaka first rose as a warrior under the powerful leader Dingiswayo of the Mthethwa, whose patronage allowed him to refine and revolutionize existing military systems. He transformed the Ibutho into a highly disciplined standing army, introducing shorter stabbing spears, heavy shields, and close combat tactics that emphasized speed, aggression, and coordination. These reforms turned the Zulu into one of the most effective fighting forces in the region. As threats from the Ndwandwe grew, Shaka combined diplomacy, intimidation, and decisive warfare to expand Zulu influence. Though initially defensive, his campaigns became increasingly aggressive, crushing rival groups and absorbing survivors into the Zulu state. Shaka often led from the front, enforcing strict discipline and demanding total loyalty, which made his armies both feared and unstoppable. Shaka's reign coincided with the Mfecane, a period of widespread warfare and upheaval across southern Africa. Though controversial, his impact reshaped regional power permanently. Assassinated by his half-brothers in 1828, Shaka remains remembered as a military innovator whose methods revolutionized African warfare.